Good evening, 49er faithful. It has been too long since you have had two beards on your screen, but here we are. I'm your host of Between Two Beards, Rob Schuh. That's my co-host, Randon McMahon. We are back after a very painful end to the 49ers season, obviously losing to Philadelphia last week. Haven't been on since because I was gifted the experience of being there in Philadelphia and left with an illness. I'm sure I was poisoned amongst other things. But Randon, it is amazing to see you, my friend. I'm glad to hear your voice. It was nice to see you prior to the program. How have you been these last 10 or 11 days?
I know the sickness of Philadelphia got you, man. It's been too long. Man, I've been good. You know, it's you're gonna talk about your experience in Philadelphia, but mine was pretty much like, I think this was the easiest loss to handle, right? Because you knew it was over once Purdy got injured, right? Like
Right.
It wasn't like a dropped interception or up by 10 in the Super Bowl, or we're first and goal on the 4 with Frank Gore and a 2-ton offensive line, and we don't run the football one time. Like, those were all supremely painful.
Yes, they were.
But this one was like, oh, we had a quarterback injury. He's not in the game. Like, he literally lost his entire tendon. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I just sat there and drank beers and looked at the TV in frustration, and that's all I could do. At that point,
I wish I was looking at a TV and drinking beers, man. I was there in the midst of it, man. 50-yard line seat, could not see a fellow Niner faithful within 15 rows of me in either direction. When McCaffrey scored that touchdown, I let out, my normal glee. Looked around, you could hear a fucking pin drop, man. Everyone's eyes were on me. Like 10 people were like, damn, I didn't even know we had a Niner fan in this section. And all of a sudden I became prime target number one. But that left me with a rough taste in my mouth. DJ Molly coming in, robbed. I agree, robbed, completely robbed. I want to thank those that are here in the chat. Before I go, I have a rant, Randon. I need to rant. I need to let go of the hatred that I'm carrying. I'm not going to let go of the hatred. The hatred I'm going to bring with me for years to come. But I need to let it out, man. So I'm going to rant in just a moment. But I want to thank those that are here in the chat. Raphael 5629ers always doing the good deed of coming in to say hello to us, to the sneakerheads, and everybody on the channel. Reminding folks to like and subscribe. Alan Elizer, man, Alan, rough one, says, Robin Randon, good evening. Do you think the Eagles are the new dirty birds instead of the Falcons? I feel like they are. Debo, the like button. Here's to a crazy offseason. It will be a crazy offseason. Are you ready to redub the Eagles the dirty birds over the Falcons, Randon?
As in, like Chris McCaffrey said at the thing, like, I just hope everybody loses. Like, everybody.
I feel you. I wish it were possible. I wish they could both lose. Global Albatross coming in. Missed you, Rob. Where you been? Glad you're here to give insight on the Super Bowl that the 49ers were robbed of. Kevin coming in from Glasgow. It's not one but two beards time and a little more with us in the chat. What a day to be alive in our man caves. Good evening, gents and tribes of the in-betweeners. Troy Knoll coming in, sneakerhead on the channel as well. Rob, great to see you still pissed about our loss, as am I. Bryant Culp is here. Beast Mode Gaming is in the house. DJ Molly, Jan Stewart coming in. Robbed the left shoe. George coming in. Hit the like button, y'all. All right, so we've said hello to everyone in the chat. We've checked in with Randon. Randon, you ready for a little rant? You ready for a little bit?
You're still a page out of my book, man. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just all right. I got to say this. Let me pre-warn those of you, because it's an early show. Brandon and I have been doing a lot of late shows, and the F-bombs are prolific in the late shows. The F-bombs fly freely from both Brandon and I, and other curse words come out. Usually on the earlier shows, we try to avoid the F-bombs. At least I try at the outset not to get flagged by YouTube. This one is going to be full of them. So if you don't like F-bombs, if you don't want a little bit of cursing, you might want to tune out right now. You might not want to see what's about to happen on the screen, because I'm not going to hold it back. It's going to be short and sweet, but this is how I felt coming out of that game. Fuck the Eagles. Fuck the fair city of Philadelphia. Brotherly love my motherfucking ass. Fuck the people of Philadelphia in particular. May you lose to the Chiefs in epic fucking fashion. I hope that they curb stomp your asses. I've always held a special spot of hatred for the Seahawks and the Cowboys of old. That hatred has been far surpassed by the way I now feel about Philadelphia. Worst fucking fan base in the National fucking Football League. Just absolute trash people for the most part. Clearly, I don't hate every Eagles fans. Some of them were decent humans, but goddamn were those decent folks few and far between. To quote one of the greatest, listen, I had a rough week and I hate the fucking Eagles, man. I had to get it out. I had to just let loose. That doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of how I feel, Randon. But I needed to drop that on here. I needed to let some of the hatred out of my body. I feel lighter after having done that, my friend.
A full verbal workout for yourself, huh?
It was indeed. Alan says, Rob, unleash Rob. Yes. The greatest 49 coming in. Hulk smash the like button. The greatest 49 feels the same way. Troy Knoll feels the same way. That's how Niners fans feel. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Eagles. I want to hear your take on this. It was obviously a tough loss. Made a little bit easier, as you said, by the fact that it was sort of once Brock went down, you just knew. But it's sad that we were robbed of the actual game taking place. Are you assigning blame or are you putting it as just bad luck?
Pomps and circumstance, right? Is what it is. It's like, it was bad luck. Like, how many times does a strip sack not end in an injury, right?
Right.
Most of the time, right? It is what it is. And then, when Johnson came in the game and we scored that touchdown, I was like, are we really going to pull this miraculous thing out? And then Garoppolo's going to lead us to the Super Bowl. And like, it just, all this like stuff came in my head. Like, cause we've been talking about the storybook and just how all these quarterbacks have just been carouseled through like this entire year and in the storylines and stuff. And I was like, this team is good enough to pull out a win with Johnson. Like, will it happen? And then it didn't happen because he got concussed.
Right.
And it was like you needed everything to go right with Josh Johnson. And then when the refs were not making calls our way, I mean, his concussion should have been roughing the passer. I mean, we've seen roughing the passer for like barely like not putting a pillow behind the quarterback's head. And like Ndamukong Suh flat out just like punishes Johnson, which I don't believe that should be roughing the passer. Like, that's not my view of the game.
Right.
But that's how it's been called all season. Right?
It's got to be consistent.
Yeah. And so like that kind of stuff. And like going in the second half, it's like that just changed the whole view on it. Like after they doubled up, like, and it was 17-7 or whatever it was, like I didn't even want to sit the second half of the bar, but I didn't want to be one of those fans that just leaves. Like, quitter,
right.
But I wanted to, I was in a little nook in this bar. There was for some reason, there was a cheerleading convention there. So like, I couldn't even get a good seat. I got there an hour and a half early. And
it sounds like there was at least something else to entertain you once the game went south.
I don't know. No, not at all. Cause cheerleading convention, all those girls are below age there, Rob. So not even Oof. Entertainment in that aspect as well. It was just pure despair.
No, and that's rough.
Yeah. So, man, I don't know. Like for me, it's like, okay, we had Hurts under 200 yards. We held their rushing attack average 3-point-something yards per carry. Like their defense didn't impress me besides the pass rush, and all that kind of stuff. Like I really feel like, and you see it in a lot of the Niners during this week at the Super Bowl talking about it. Like if they just believe, like if they had any sort of quarterback, like we would have won that game. Like give us anybody. Like I don't think it really mattered to them. Give me Purdy, give me Jimmy, give me Trey. Can we give a starting quarterback and like we win this game? And I think maybe the good thing that'll come out of this, and maybe it won't ever benefit the Niners, is that either was the 80s or 90s, you were allowed to have 3 quarterbacks on your roster. One of the quarterbacks did not count against the 53 or whatever that suited up.
Right.
It was kind of like an emergency, just like the NHL has E-Bug, right? An emergency backup goalie. If for some reason, it happens once a year where both goalies get injured and this random janitor gets to live his dream and play goalie. So like the same thing could happen for the National Football League, where you're allowed to carry 3 quarterbacks. He just wears pads and has a earphone probably 99% of the time. But like you look at this game, and it happened in the worst time. Like this happens week 4. It doesn't really matter. Last year, the Broncos had to start a wide receiver at quarterback in the regular season. Nobody batted an eye. But when you look at the National Football League, when everybody's watching, like I think this could lend itself to a rule change, allowing that to happen again. You saw last year, the Chiefs and Bills game, right? Led to a change in the overtime rule.
Right.
You looked at the pass interference rule got changed with the Rams and the Saints game. So like, man, like it could lend itself for something down the line, and as far as for better football, regardless if it ever benefits the Niners. But it was a tough pill to swallow.
I think it absolutely could end up becoming a rule change that no one wants to see that, in particular in the playoffs, right? We were build this amazing game, these 2 powerhouse teams within the NFC, and everyone was robbed of that opportunity, including Eagles fans. I mean, I know they won, so they're happy about it, but we had the opportunity to see one of those epic slugfests between these 2, and we're just absolutely robbed of it. I don't know that I can go as far as many, not many, some 49ers players have intimated that were we simply carrying a third quarterback on the roster in that game, that it would have necessarily changed it. Christian McCaffrey saying it feels like something got stolen from you. Hopefully they change that rule where you can carry a third quarterback. Debo on First Take saying, I wish we took one more quarterback into that game and it probably would have been a different outcome. I'm not sure that that's actually the case, right? Once we got to Josh Johnson, things had already gone downhill. I'm not sure who that third quarterback would have been, but unless his name was Jimmy Garoppolo and he was fully healthy, I'm not sure that he's changing the outcome of that one. So I do believe it leads to a future rule change. I don't know that it would have happened to us. But I like what Brandon Ayuk had to say about it being lucky for the Eagles in what transpired. He said this on Brad Graham's podcast. Shout out to Brad. Amazing interview. Says, I don't know fully about that defense. They talk about them being a good defense. I'm not sure. I think the pass game, this Kansas City pass game, will expose what we thought we were going to be able to expose before some unfortunate circumstances. If I were going to bet on this game, I'd put everything that I own, get it in cash, and put my money on the Kansas City Chiefs. You get lucky to win a Super Bowl, and the Eagles just got extremely lucky You've got to get lucky to win a Super Bowl, and the Eagles just got extremely lucky last week. So who's to say they can't do it twice? I do think the Eagles got lucky in this one and that it would have been a different game. I just don't know that I'm confident we could have won with a third quarterback that wasn't Brock Purdy. To me, to your point, once Brock Purdy went down, it felt like it was headed in the wrong direction.
I just look at it like, if you think 3 quarterbacks, right? What if all of our quarterbacks were healthy? Right? And then you had Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Purdy all suited up for this game, and you could use all 3.
Right.
Like then does that make the difference or the change? Does it make it to where you want to start like looking for more of these quarterbacks that are good, NCAA players that maybe aren't like supreme athletes, because you can hold an extra one on your roster? Guys like maybe this year, like Max Duggan or, et cetera, that the Brock Purdy's of the world that get to hold on, where our team have looked different out of camp if you were allowed to have Nate Sudfeld and Brock Purdy on the roster. Obviously, we signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but that just kind of makes the thing like maybe it might never come up in the next 30 years in a playoff game. But if it does, the fans deserve better at that point. And,
they do.
And, I always look at it, and they say it every single time: a championship is skill and luck, right? So,
yes.
And right now, the Eagles had skill all the way throughout the full season to get the number 1 seed. They lucked out by not playing a fully healthy Niners team, and so they're getting into the Super Bowl there. Like, they deserve it, and they got a little bit of lucky as well. So all you need to do is get to the dance, and then everything can happen in one football game, and that's part of sports. It's just infuriating because I truly believe we were the better team. Yes. There was some moxie about the way this team was playing that felt like a Super Bowl roster, and like, as much as you assume things that will go right or assume that your team will win, we'll never know at this point.
Right. we've just been robbed of that outcome. Beast Mode Gaming coming in with the super chat. He's a sneakerhead here on the channel. I appreciate it. He say, can't say I didn't warn you. LOL. The Eagles don't deserve it. It was a lot of people said, hey, it was going to be a shit show going into that stadium. They were right about that. They were absolutely.
Did you get stuff thrown at you or anything?
What's that?
Did you get stuff thrown at you or anything like that?
So I got a little bit thrown at me, but nothing that was offensive in that way. In talking to some fellow 49er fans that were in a little more ruckus area of the parking lot, they got actual glass bottles heaved at them as they were going into the stadium. The best story, and I can't repeat verbatim what was said, but let's just say that the most aggravating part of the Phillies fans was how abundant, because of the place where the 49ers call home, San Francisco, how abundant the homophobic slurs were. And if you know, that has a tendency to cause the blood to boil in a way that just is hard to describe. And when you're outnumbered 100, 150 to 1, your choice is to either get into a physical altercation and get absolutely destroyed or just choke it down. And, you know, if you decide to just say, hey, you know, whatever you lob my way, as far as insults, I'm just going to take those insults. I'm just going to let them bounce right off of me. But they then build up. And that's where the fuel from the rant came. Speaking of the rant, Alan Elizer says, I feel the same way. Fuck the Eagles. We were totally robbed. Troy, congratulations. He's just been a member for 12 months. Kevin says, LOL, Rob, you just lost a pound in weight carrying that rant till this show. Well contained since talking with Jack in your hotel room. I agree. Fuck them for sure. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, there was one last quote about that game that I'm just going to throw out there because it goes into the conspiracy theory realm. And Mike Silver put this out, and it's an anonymous source, so you can shoot holes in it from that perspective. But it was someone from the 49ers, an anonymous player, said to Mike Silver, it felt like once Purdy got hurt, someone at the league called down and said, make sure the Eagles get to the Super Bowl and not them. I will say it felt that way, and I don't buy into that for a second. You have the rumors about the NFL being scripted. I just don't buy that. I don't think the league interferes in that way. Occasionally, could a ref have a bet on a game and blow some calls? Sure. At the individual level, I'm not against the conspiracy theories. At the league level, they're just making too much money to make it fake. Why? Like, why not just keep it real and allow what happens to happen? So I'm not buying that one because it would have been the storyline of 2 more weeks. Jimmy maybe gets healthy and is the starter for the Super Bowl. That would have been the ultimate storyline for the NFL. Are you buying any of the conspiracy theories?
No, I mean, the calls were fairly bad, and they were also bad in the Chiefs game as well. I mean, so, Goodell or whatever saying today that he thinks the refereeing has never been better. I think you're making it almost impossible. They're thinking about making, what is that, the hip tackle illegal now, to where you drag a player back from behind because Tony Pollard got his ankle rolled up on. Like that's like what? So what? We are going to be playing flag football in about 5 years, is what we are if this continues, right? Like, I mean, ultimately, no. I think that, money does make the world go around. So you could see, I wouldn't be surprised if something like this came out 30 years from now, but I'm not like, hey, like every single thing that happens in the NFL world, I'm pointing to with a tinfoil hat on.
Right. Nor I. All right, let's stop talking about the damn Eagles and just root for them to lose this weekend. Let's go Chiefs. I realize some people probably can't get on the bandwagon of the Chiefs either. I understand that, but 2019 was a long time ago. February 2020, when I was there in Miami, pales in comparison to the memory of being in Philly. Let's talk about some Niners instead. 5th-year options coming up for Kinlaw and Brandon Ayuk. The salary figures are as follows, good sir. Kinlaw would be a 5th-year option at $10.455 million. Brandon Ayuk would be at $14.124 million. Both are going into their 4th year now, so that would be for the 2024 season. Of those two, are you picking either one of the 5th-year options up, which is going to be due this offseason?
I think they're both pretty easy decisions. I think Kinlaw is an absolute no, and Ayuk is an absolute yes. Like, 1,000-yard receiver for 14, you're looking at like Christian Kirk didn't even have 1,000-yard season, and he got 20-something million. Like, you could definitely see another team, i.e. the Texans or et cetera, paying Ayuk over $20 million, right? And so, and I didn't really think about this the other day until it was brought up on a different pod. I can't remember which podcast it was, but like, I've been saying, like, you can't pay Debo and Ayuk, but really, realistically, you can, right? So next year is the second year of Debo's contract. This year will be the fourth year of Ayuk, and then Ayuk goes to the fifth-year option in the same season that Debo's contract is over. And so we can't pay Debo again at past 30 and pay Ayuk, but you can pay one or the other going forward. But we'll still have both of them for the next 2 seasons, and that's the win window, right? Like, you got to win under Lance's. I guess Purdy resets that window if Purdy ends up being the guy, but we got to win within the next 2 years under that rookie contract.
Yeah, the window is freaking right now. No question about it. As it stands at this moment, prior to free agency this offseason, Ayuk at $14 million would just be the 28th highest paid wide receiver, right? That's a no-brainer because you look at his production and his value. I think you could make an argument that he's a top 10 wideout after this season, right? I mean, it was a phenomenal year for Brandon Ayuk. 3 different quarterbacks. He puts up 78 receptions for just over 1,000 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns on the year. I would definitely pick that one up. And as much as I hate to say it, it is a no-brainer with Kinlaw as well. I mean, he still has a chance to redeem his career, right? There's no question that the door is open for him. If he exceeds expectations in his 4th year, the Niners might try to re-sign him. He would have other suitors, but until he's able to play, I believe the stat is now out of 40 some possible games, he's played like 13. I mean, it's a ridiculously low percentage of potential games played by Javon Kinlaw. And so at this point, it would seem crazy to pick it up and guarantee paying. If this type of injury, things could go downhill in his 4th year. If things change and he has a great season, I still don't think that you'd end up paying him that much because of the first 3 years and the inconsistency that is there. So I'm with you on that one. Let's talk about another player that's maybe a bigger priority if anything changes. Trent Williams. It seemed as if there were hintings at retirement. They were clearing out their lockers January 31st. Trent Williams causes the stir by saying the following. He says, at my age, you do kind of think about life after football. And he left it there. He cleared the air at the Pro Bowl on Saturday saying, yeah, for sure, I'm going to be back. Next year, the year after, I'm under contract until I'm 39 years old. And then in response to a follow-up about his earlier comments, he's like, I think I didn't understand the question. I'm not buying that at all. I think he was emotionally spent after that game. But it does raise the question. Do you feel any concerns about Trent Williams from what he said this year as to that signaling what he's going to go through mentally for future seasons every offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it is something for me, right? I think the quest for a trophy for him is the only thing really, I think it's probably the only thing putting him in the game still, right? So you're looking at, he's in his mid-30s. He's only had 2 fully healthy seasons. Every other seasons he's been dealing with actual injuries keeping him out. And then the years that he's been healthy, you best believe he's banged up, right? I mean, 300-pound man ain't feeling like really great all the time, going up against in the trenches, getting hit constantly. And so when you're that old and you had an emotional season and you go deep into the playoff 2 years in a row, it probably feels like, hey, I'm probably done. Like, I don't know if I want to get my body ready for this again, Yeah. And then a couple days later with a couple rests and thinking about it, he's like, yeah, I probably could do this. I probably could do this, but I do think it's close. And you really got to look at it to where I think it wasn't really a problem last year really even that I thought about because, and we'll get in, I guess maybe this is a foreshadowing to the next question, but with McGlinchey and him being locked up, you didn't really think about it, right? Now McGlinchey's a free agent. He mentions retirement. Like, could you imagine no tackles for the Niners right now? Like, that would be a huge weakness, right? So
huge.
I think when you go from having, as much as people don't like McGlinchey, I mean, he's a top 5 run blocker by PFF almost every single year that he's played. I think he's a top 10 player this offseason for PFF to get paid. Right. So, I mean, as much as Niners fans like replay him getting hip tossed by Micah Parsons over and over in their head, among other really bad plays, overall, he plays well. And I think that's just society in general. Like they constantly think about the negative things over the positive,
Yes.
but there's been stretches where Mike McGlinchey has been really good, like especially in the run game. And, I think that when you have the best tackle in football and you have a guy that's, rated in the top 5 in run blocking and arguably the top 40, I think he was overall, like you have good bookends to the offensive line. And to think that both of them could be leaving in the matter of 2 years, one of them possibly this summer, it leaves a lot to be desired on that offensive line.
It does. And I think you're in that right frame of reference for Trent specifically, right? Talking about if he's going to finish out this contract, 5 more freaking years. The dude is 34 years old. He signed through 39. The idea that at 34, he's like, do I really want to come back? My guess is by the time he hits 37, 38, the answer to that question is going to be no, because you're talking about a dude that now is wealthy beyond imagine, right? Over the course of his career, in particular, with this most recent contract, you're looking at a dude who is swimming in money. So the decision no longer is, do I need that next contract? Do I need that additional money to continue to fund my lifestyle? It becomes, do I want to have a quality life when I leave this game? Do I want to be able to walk? Do I want to be able to play with my kids? Guys start to ask themselves those questions, in particular, the guys that have earned those huge contracts. I don't think it's out of the question that he doesn't finish this contract. The Niners had him until he was 39. When they did, Trent had a lot of leverage at that point, and he did get himself a good contract. I want to get into that McGlinchey topic that you brought up there, Randon. First, I'm getting to Kevin's super chat coming in from Glasgow. He says, you should have signed Schuh, we should have signed Schuh, my favorite defensive tackle. Not blaming you, Rob, but you could have slipped a note into his pocket, though. No to Kinlaw, guys, a waste of roster spot, in my opinion. The reference to Ndamukong Suh is that he does frequent the Whole Foods that is 2 blocks from my house when it is the off season. I think his parents, he grew up in Portland. His parents still live in Irvington, which is like 5 blocks from where I'm at. And yes, I have run into him. I don't think I'm trying to slip a note into Ndamukong's pocket while he's not looking. That's a surefire way to get laid out on the floor of a Whole Foods. And I saw what he did to Josh Johnson. I don't want that to happen to me as well. I would be more than concussed at that point. But Kevin, totally agree. And as does Randon, neither one of us are re-signing Kinlaw either. That depth with Sue could have helped, though, Randon. I mean, do you see, this isn't a topic, but clearly Kevin brings it up here. Do you see defensive line and specifically D tackle as a big need for this offseason?
I don't know if it's a big need because I think you can find big bodies, but I think that you look at, I think the defensive line underperformed.
Yeah, they did.
And not from a sack, from a sack perspective, but I think that they did a great job with the run defense, but that also comes into tune of having the best linebacking core in the NFL, right? That helps that out. But I just think there was a lot to be desired. I think some games we got pushed around. I mean, you look at the Eagles game, the Eagles offensive line was a good offensive line. We got pushed around a little bit, right? So having a couple more LBs, maybe a true nose tackle, even though we don't play a 3-4, be available. You saw what the money that the Broncos gave, our boy over there, for a good nose tackle and a guy that can clog up the middle.
Yep.
I think it might be something that you have to sign, but is it a DT is not a huge need overall, right? Obviously, we're talking about tackle, all those big end positions. Maybe if somebody falls, we're also getting, I forget that guy's name that he was on the IR the whole year.
The rookie, right?
The rookie from last year. Yeah.
I know who you're talking about, and I'm sure it will hit the chat momentarily, but the name is escaping me at the moment. But yes, we have reinforcements coming for sure. That was a high quality pick that fell because of the knee injury suffered, obviously, in the run up to the draft. But that is absolutely going to be, it's coming to me. It's something Davis, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So anyway, Davis will be back. To me, it's a pretty big need when I take into account needing someone opposite of Bosa and then needing some defensive tackle help as well. We obviously don't have a pick high enough to draft a defensive end. You could make your arguments about Drake Jackson being ready for year 2, but I just don't know that we saw enough to count on that being the fact. There aren't many defensive ends available in free agency, but I see this one as a big need. Yeah, Kalia Davis. That is thank you to the Greatest 49 and Tom Jensen coming in first with it. Kalia Davis, indeed. Yes, so let's get into another Niner who is a free agent. And the question is, do you re-sign Mike McGlinchey? Some reports have Mike earning as much as $15 million plus per year in free agency. He's very clearly embracing the free agent role. He wore the shirt from CAA Sports, the agency that represents him, on that last day of locker cleanout. So clearly getting paid is on Mike McGlinchey's mind. Are you ponying up that amount of money to re-sign Mike McGlinchey, or are you going next man up route?
It depends on what that money is, right? I think we're going to get outbid, just like we did with Laken Tomlinson. I think we are. I mean, you're looking at all the teams. Everybody needs tackles. There's very few teams that has 2 good tackles, right? And as much as people, cry and complain about McGlinchey's play, he's obviously by every single reporter out there saying that he's one of the top 5, 10 free agents available.
Yes.
I have a feeling somebody's going to pay him north of like 18 or so million.
Wow.
And I think we're going to get outbid just because the fact that people need tackles, right? I mean, PFF, I think, had him at 14.5, 15 million.
Yeah.
Like, can we really afford, what does that make with him and Trent Williams? That's over 40 plus million on the tackle spot. Like, is that really something that we can do with everybody else getting increases, right? I mean, Bosa's probably going to make over 20 something million with the 5th year option. You have increases in Kittle and Fred Warner happening. I think the biggest year of Charvarius Ward's contract is this season. Like, all these guys are getting pay increases. Deebo Samuel, like you can't continue to pay everybody.
No, you cannot. And the Niners
Juice is making $8 million for a fullback. Like, you can't just you can't continue to pay everybody. So ultimately, I think we're going to get outbid. And what is dumb is that we don't have a pick to replace him.
No, not until the 3rd round. That's like the $8 million for Juice is like paying $8 million for a position that doesn't even exist for most teams, right? It's like flushing that for any other team. Obviously, Juice has huge value for the 49ers. I think that $8 million is well worth it. I'm not implying that. But when you look at other teams that don't even employ a fullback, we're like, yeah, we're just going to earmark $8 million for that, the tackles. So I think you're right. It adds up. Eventually, you cannot pay everyone. This is one where, unless it plays out as you described, where Mike does get that bag, where he makes the $18 million a year range, I hope the Niners are in it. I hope that they make a realistic offer, that they try to match whatever other teams are giving, unless it becomes unreasonable, such as the Christian Kirk contract or the $18 million that you're mentioning there. But up to that 15, it's one of those where I start to look at the fact that Trent in 3 more years may decide to hang him up. And you just want to have those tackle spots locked down. The Niners clearly value those at the offensive line, along the offensive line, to a higher degree than the center and the 2 guard positions. It's the exterior that they're focused on. And to your point, Mike McGlinchey gets a bad rap for those very, very visual mistakes that are made, but for the vast majority of the time is a very capable left tackle. So I do hope that the Niners attempt to bring him back. Ian Sharp doesn't think so. He says Ward and McGlinchey probably gone. I think if I'm making a prediction, I'm guessing that I think Ian's right. I think Ward and McGlinchey probably are gone. Jason Walsh agreeing. Yeah, I think he's getting priced out too. What are your feelings on whether we are able to re-sign Jimmy Ward and Mike McGlinchey? I know we're throwing Jimmy Ward in here randomly.
I think we both know. I mean, Jimmy Ward pretty much on his IG pretty much said that he's leaving, right? Like he wanted to play safety. He didn't get to play safety. He made it multiple times. Like, he threw jabs at Shanahan with Diamador Lenore. Like, oh, what do you think about Diamador Lenore's play? Well, it's amazing when you keep a guy at the same position for a full year, he learns how to play that position, right? So, I just think it's there. And I still think we sign either one. Now that comes the time is like, is it going to be like Burford, who goes out from guard to where we need to get a guard? Is it going to be easier to find a guard there? Is Brunskill going to play guard while Burford goes out? What's the, we can have another backup. Do we go get a free agent? Do you roll the gamble that a third round player is going to play, right? I mean, you look at last year, one draft pick out of our entire draft played the entire season.
Right.
The starting position, one out of the however many that we had, right? I mean, Drake Jackson didn't even play in like past week 6. Brock Purdy only played because of injury. You had Samuel Womack, who started the season, didn't finish the season, right? Like the only player that played the whole year was Burford. Like what if you go into the season expecting to draft a tackle in the 3rd round and expecting him to be a starter, like that's asinine. Like there's really no good option, to be honest with you. And it's going to be a weakness for the team.
The only one that you didn't mention that probably is on that list is Colton McKivitz, right? I mean, they may think that he can slide in, but I don't believe that any of those really do fit the bill. I like Fable's question here. What's your guess on the Niners number that they pay for Mike McGlinchey? I'm going to guess that they'd go up into that 14.5 million per year range. I think they'd be comfortable with that. I agree with you, though, that most likely some other team is going to come in above that.
I don't think, and I think I don't know if he said it personally or somebody talked to his agent saying that there is no such thing as a hometown discount. So I think he's going for all the money, right? I mean, like, I don't know.
Bag, Mike.
You look at, like, he had a really bad injury with his quad. And it probably made him think like, hey, like, this is not going to last forever. Like, and you're looking at, like, I need to get my money when I can. This is going to be the biggest bag I'm probably ever going to get unless I'm a all pro at the end of this contract, right? So, it's good. I mean, it is what it is. Like, I mean, Debo had to do it for him and his family. Michael McGlinchey's going to have to do it. Lincoln Tomlinson had to do it. Like, people need to cash in. It's part of the game.
Absolutely. By the way, speaking of cashing in, I got to do this because I'm the kind of person that I will absolutely pay a debt when it's owed. So cashing in on this one, I'm not going to pay much on it, but JT56. JT56 was on the program before the Eagles game, and he was talking some trash, but it was good trash. It was like, hey, we're going to beat you because of these things, right? It was definitely confidence in his team, and he was proven to be correct. Regardless of whatever circumstances played out, the Eagles most definitely won that game. They won it handily, and they are on their way to the Super Bowl. JT56, you may have missed the rant that I did at the beginning of the show. If you saw it or if you go back to watch it, there are a lot of F-bombs that are thrown at Philadelphia Eagles fans. At which point, though, I say not every Eagles fan. I will say to this point, I have respect for you in the way that you came to the program originally. And to this point, I haven't scrolled down to see any other comments, but to this point, some reasonable comments as well. Gloating, which is to be expected, but nothing disrespectful. However, if things trend in the disrespectful direction, you can go back and rewatch the beginning of the show and see how I feel about that. It was me letting loose of your fellow Philadelphia brethren and their level of disrespect. They did not match up to your level of respect, which hands down, I appreciate. So just wanted to give you your due and let you know that, yes, you guys are headed to the Super Bowl, and I'll be rooting against you very fervently.
Yeah, I want to gold-blooded coming in there saying I'm paying big money for an often injured player. Like, Michael McGlinchey's been healthy. Yeah,
this season in particular after that injury.
Outside of that big injury, like you're looking at 16 games his rookie season, 12. So he missed 4. That's not bad. And then 16 and 17 this year. Like the only big season where he missed most of the season was the quad tear, right? Like he's been a steady part of this offensive line.
Yes, he has. And he definitely he's been healthy the vast majority of his career. And this season, again, going back to this season where there was speculation that, man, he wasn't going to heal from that injury, that it could end his career. It could certainly impact the way in which he played. No, he was a warrior getting through this one. And I'm with Ian on this one. It's his chance to get paid, and he probably will get paid as well. Kevin coming in. He says, Rob, careful. They're sending those Eagle fans in the chat room back so fast you get a UCL. I'm guessing a UCL tear. My UCLs are in good shape. I was just in the gym today. We're making sure that everything's in tip-top shape. All right, let's transition here, talking about that UCL, perfect tie-in to Purdy's surgery. We talking UCLs on this program. It was reported yesterday that Purdy's scheduled to get his surgery on that ruptured UCL, which is an ulnar collateral ligament, very similar to the injury in baseball that requires the Tommy John surgery, much more common in baseball than it is in football. It was a fluke, unfortunately, but on February 22nd, he is scheduled to get that taken care of, and he's getting it done by the team physician for the Texas Rangers, Dr. Keith Meister. Again, those injuries far more common in baseball, and so having it done by a team physician for the Texas Rangers makes a ton of sense. It should be a full recovery in time for training camp. However, if you start to do the math from the 22nd, now you're looking at, if it's a full 6 months, you're talking about August 22nd. And so you are now into training camp at that point. So if he is ready prior to 6 months, this isn't interesting, right? Most likely, then we see him at the number one position, I would think. We'll talk about that in a moment because Kittle had some words on that. But the timing now lends itself to where Trey Lance is going to get some of those snaps. And it just is trending in the direction of a shit show for this offseason, Randon.
At least it's not about Jimmy G anymore. So
thank God.
No offense to the Jimmy G man. Wish you all the best, but
wish him the best, but please.
Let's have some new topics here. Yeah, I mean, so I forget the doctor's name, and I wish I would have wrote it down. But essentially, what he said is, with these surgeries, why the wait time is longer for baseball players is because they extend the release point farther away from their body.
Interesting.
So there's more torque and there's more pressure put on the ligament. So they need to do way more physical therapy to strengthen all the muscles around the UCL in order for them to start throwing the baseball. There was video of Nick Mullins throwing at 3 months and 4 months after surgery. And based on the video, it looked to be 20 to 25 yards. So like at the physical therapy place, you had, who's the other guy? He actually had full Tommy John and he was out 7 months. Jake Delhomme, I think it was.
Nice.
So, and he was out 7 months, and he said, and really the doctor said it's because the release point is up here, you're not putting as much pressure on the ligament. When you play baseball, the release point is way farther away, and you're putting more pressure on the ligament, which means that they have to do way more physical therapy to ensure that the ligament is attached and the muscles around it are. That's why often baseball players come back from this injury better than when they went in, because they do so much physical therapy around the elbow, around the shoulder, to make sure all the other ligaments there. So, I mean, you could see Purdy throwing at 4 months and being ready for camp, like, and that type of thing. So I'm not sure it's going to be a full 6. I think 6 is probably the max you're looking at for this repair. But I mean, depending on where you're looking at this, he could be ready for camp like right away. Like, I think it's going to be between the 4 and 6 months. I wouldn't be surprised if they're both ready to go. It was interesting to me that Purdy took so long to get the surgery done to begin with. Like, he still hasn't gotten it. Right.
Yeah, so it's not scheduled until the 22nd, and he's been getting a bunch of opinions on it up to this point. Now that he's decided, he's locked in.
I've also read that, like, the doctors, if for second opinions want to get their hands on it, sometimes MRIs aren't fully definitive. They also want to wait for the surgery when all the swelling has gone down. So, like, but he's going. Yeah, I think he is going to the guy that's the Rangers' personal surgeon. So he's going to a baseball guy to get it done. So
he is. We've just gotten from Fable JVC doing some research. This is what you get when you have a bunch of sleuth detectives. He says, I'm concerned that when I looked up Dr. Meister, Texas Rangers, the Google search turned up his website and they misspelled surgeon. What the fuck? So hopefully he's better at surgery than he is at designing websites. I mean, that's just what we're looking at. Okay, we have a emergency topic that is coming in because we got to celebrate it. I've just confirmed what Raphael 5629ers has put in the chat. Nick Bosa voted Defensive Player of the Year It came out. He won 46 of the 50 first place votes for Defensive Player of the Year, stealing that one from Akash and Varathan on Twitter. You had Hassan Reddick, Chris Jones, and Quinnen Williams got some votes in there, but 46 out of 50 of the first place votes went to Nick Bosa, who is now your Defensive Player of the Year. I think it is well deserved, not surprising in the least. What are you thinking, Randon? Very much a deserved honor for Nick.
Nice. I mean, he needed to win, like, right? I mean, outside of a couple people on Twitter saying like, oh, you guys don't watch the tape, you're only going based off stats and all this kind of stuff. Micah Parsons, like, yeah, he's a great player. He didn't have a good enough season to win Defensive Player of the Year. So, like, I mean, it was clear cut. Like, it was clear. Vegas stopped taking money on this bet like week 16. Like, when Vegas is stopped taking money on it, you know that it's almost guaranteed, right? Like, they're not stupid. They don't lose money very often. So, like, I was expecting it. I'm glad it happened. It just made his price tag for his extension go up from probably 30 to 35 million. But it's well deserved for him.
It is well deserved, but yeah, the man is absolutely getting paid. All right, let's talk about.
I saw it earlier in the chat that DeMeco Ryans won Assistant of the Year.
Ooh, I have not confirmed that. I didn't realize that was a category, assistant coach being a category. I'm scrolling through Twitter though as we speak to see if I see something about DeMeco as well. It would be well earned if that was the fact.
Although SF Niners just posted on Twitter that Chief of Staff Nick Cray, the boombox carrier, got sniped by the Texans. He's going to be their Chief of Staff. So
we need a
new boombox guy.
That's terrible. It's part of our swag. All right, so I like this from Eric Branch. I'm just throwing it in there for the Defensive Player of the Year. But these are the only players who have won NFL Defensive Player of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year awards in their career. Nick Bosa being top of the list there. Listen to the rest of these folks. Aaron Donald, Luke Kuechly, Brian Urlacher, Charles Woodson, Terrell Suggs, Dana Stubblefield, Lawrence Taylor, Jack Lambert, and Joe Green. That's a fucking phenomenal list. If you want to know how good a person is, how good an award is, how big the accolades are, tell me who else is on that list. When I read the rest of that list, those are all Hall of Fame players. That's a phenomenal honor for Nick Bosa, and it's well deserved.
I mean, that's some company right there.
I'm company.
I'm a loss for words. Like that is a list right there.
Right, Jason Walsh. That's a damn fine list. That's top notch. Shout out to Eric Branch for putting that out on Twitter. I got the opportunity to meet and talk with Eric Branch as I was waiting for that last flight out to Philly. Really nice guy. We were standing in line at Southwest, to get on the plane. He chatted me up, had no problem answering questions. Just was a good dude. That was absolutely a cool moment. So shout out to Eric Branch. Let's transition to that next topic of Kittle, talking quarterback one spot. He was on Von Miller's podcast, the Von Cast, and declared that it's Brock's job to lose. Specifically, he was quoted as saying Trey Lance is still there, and Trey, unfortunately, has not really gotten a fair shot of being an NFL quarterback yet. You got a full rain game monsoon versus the Bears, and he got hurt in his second game. Trey still got plenty of talent. He just needs to get out there and play. But you can talk about what Brock Purdy did. He's fantastic. Our offense was operating at the highest it's probably been since 2019. So in my opinion, it's Brock's job to lose, but there will be competition since Brock will be out till training camp with his surgery. So it's going to be interesting. But when you find a guy like that who can seamlessly jump in, I think it's his job to lose. Randon, do you think it was a mistake for Kittle to come out and make these comments, or do you agree with him?
I don't know if you remember this last year or if it just didn't happen, but it seems to me that the Niners are just being interviewed everywhere at the Super Bowl, where last year it didn't seem that way. Like, where was all the candid talk last season? Like you're having Chris McCaffrey telling fans of fantasy football to pretty much go fuck themselves. Like you're having Debo talk on every single thing. Kittle's talking everywhere. like Trey Lance is getting huge interviews, and like Like, it's just crazy. Like, it's just crazy the amount of access to the Niners at the Super Bowl where they're not even playing, like,
Right.
that we're getting. And, I think Debo said it. Like, he said that Kyle Shanahan asked the team, like the key members of the team, what they thought about the QB situation last year. Like, if that's any indication, we talked about it ad nauseum with Jimmy Garoppolo and how the team, the locker room were behind him because of where he was with the team when they made the run. He was the one leading them at the quarterback position.
Right.
Right. Like, not saying that Kittle's not buzzed with Trey Lance, not saying that any of these guys aren't. We definitely know Ayuk is, but
Yes.
when you are the quarterback and you're the one melding this team down to win 12 straight and go to the NFC Championship game, like, it's got a whole different panache for a lot of these veteran guys, right? Like, you and I believe in Trey Lance, but there's only so much belief does, right? Where are the facts? The facts are that Purdy can win games. And we were a top 5 offense in the league with Purdy at quarterback. It's not about, hey, this guy has got, this guy's got the moxie and this guy's got this and the locker room. Like, that's what you heard about Jimmy G. It wasn't about his stats. It was like, oh, like, he controls the locker room. A lot of guys like him and he wins games. Well, with Purdy, like, they went up 8 points per game when he was at quarterback. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with Christian McCaffrey, but you win 7 straight. Like, they're rolling. Like, this team fully believed in themselves and they believed in Brock Purdy. Like, that's got to hold weight going into camp.
It does. I'm with you on that. And I love that call out of facts versus belief, right? The idea of one actually happened. We can all see it with our own eyes. The teammates were a part of that experience. They watched Brock Purdy do what he did. And the other is belief. And you and I do share that belief. I think both of us feel there's an immense amount of untapped potential within Trey Lance. And Brock Purdy showed what he could do within this offense. If I'm projecting what I think Trey Lance can do in this offense, it's very exciting. If I'm basing it strictly off of what he has done to this point, it's been less consistent. And clearly, if you're comparing and contrasting the two of what they have actually done within these offenses, I'm with you. I think you absolutely have to give that to Brock Purdy at this point. Doesn't mean that it can't change in the future. Jason Walsh, I appreciated this as well. He says, I appreciate, though, that Kittle was saying Trey wasn't given a fair shot. At least someone acknowledged it. I think all of the Niner players have acknowledged it, the coaching staff. Where you don't hear it acknowledged is in some less than reasonable podcasts where people just want to write off someone quickly because bold statements get better traction when it comes to podcasts. Running it down the middle and giving a well-rationed opinion on what is transpiring, whether a player is elite or a bust, and saying, well, we actually don't know right now, is not as exciting as a declarative statement of Trey Lance is a bust. So I think you have a lot of people that pound their chest and make those statements, and it's just ill-informed in my mind.
Yeah, like you wanting to be a armchair GM and having the right call on Twitter so you can tout it and pull up your receipts is worth a man's career.
Right.
Like people wishing ill will upon the kid. And we'll get within his interview, which I thought was astounding. But I think Kittle's right here. I mean, I think a lot of people felt it. I mean, a lot of people felt the team escalate. Kittle's career sure escalated. Like, he had 1 touchdown before that, and then he was getting fed. So I'm sure he loves that.
There's a reason why Kittle's excited.
Right. So it's like, I get it. Like, I mean, I fully understand. And like, and so far to his career, whether it's in his own doing or because of injury, Trey Lance has been a bust from where he's been drafted. Will he be a bust his entire career? I don't think so, because I believe in the kid. But like, to be honest, if Purdy doesn't get injured, and even if we lose this game and Purdy's healthy, like, you got to assume that he's the number one going into a camp. Right. If he takes the team to a Super Bowl and wins a Super Bowl, there's no doubt in my mind he's the number one going into camp.
None.
So where we're going to get into, and we're going to talk about probably ad nauseum for the entire offseason, is will the OTAs and all that kind of stuff like that have enough sway to give Lance the job, or will what he did last season give Purdy the job, even though he's coming off injury? Well, that remains to be seen.
Yes, I think he's earned it at this point. He has earned that look at number one. And what Lance is able to do in OTAs, and if Brock does miss the start of training camp, that could absolutely change the conversation if he comes in looking like a more complete player at that point, a more consistent player, I should say, because the physical skills, the physical upside is very clear with Lance. And as of right now, we've seen who has been more effective. Speaking of Lance, he was talking with Rich Eisen recently, and he talked about some interesting things, right? About sort of feeling lost when he was in the rehab process and needing to find his role. To me, it says a lot about Trey and his character, that he felt the need to break down pressures and add value to the equation because he wanted to make sure that as a teammate, he was contributing. It comes across as if he doesn't want things to get handed to him. He had quotes from the interview, things like, get on the field and compete. He said, and I quote, everyone saw what Brock did. So basically acknowledging what you and I were just talking about, that, hey, I saw what Brock Purdy did out there. I understand that I need to come back in and prove myself. And then following it up by saying, again, I just want an opportunity to compete. To me, it says Trey still has the fire. He still has that element that you want in a starting quarterback, and he just needs that next opportunity. It's unclear to me whether that opportunity will come here in San Francisco or whether he will have to find it elsewhere, because if Brock Purdy is healthy after the surgery and continues to do what he did this year, you would think that he owns that job going forward. What did you take out of that interview between Trey Lance and Rich Eisen?
I thought that's why a lot of Niners fans love him. Like, he owned up to the fact that he hasn't lived up to what he's played.
Right.
He said that he hasn't been given he hasn't really gotten a shot to prove himself. True, both true statements. He said he doesn't want things handed to him, which it's great. Like, he's not expecting to be quarterback one going into the season. He wants to earn it. Phenomenal. He owns up to a lot of the things in there. He's also calling out Fred Warner, saying that he doesn't want the smoke to come to OTAs.
Yes.
So you see that he's confident in his own abilities, right? He's going up to, he's saying that he's hanging out with CMC and all the guys. Like, he's still part of this team. And the fact that he saw it mid-season. He said, hey, I'm not contributing to this team at all. Like, I'm going to all these meetings, but I'm not on the sideline contributing. Now that I can walk around and do stuff, I want to help this team. And he said, yeah, I didn't really need to help Jimmy as much as I needed to help Brock, but I felt like this was my way to get us to where we needed to go. And he was given more responsibilities. And I think that shows leaps and bounds about how this kid wants to come in and compete. He wants to be great. He wants to have all the mindset. And I think that's the number one reason why I like the kid. I like the kid because he believes in himself. He wants to do everything he can to be better. And, I really think that it shows that the Niners drafted the right guy up here. Now, will he ever put it on the field? It remains to be seen, but he's going to be given every opportunity in OTAs.
Absolutely. It also called out, by the way, I love that line that you brought out where he says about Fred Warner. He then quickly walks it back when he says he doesn't want that smoke. He doesn't want that smoke. I love it. I absolutely love that quote from him. It tells you the mindset that he has. It's absolutely what you want from a quarterback, whether he is going to be your starting quarterback or whether he's going to be the backup going forward. Either one, you want that mentality of the winner, the person who wants to compete, the person who does want that smoke. So, yeah, I absolutely loved it. I think he said all the right things, and I hope that he's able to prove more out on the field. I'm taking these couple of folks at their word. Wait, maybe I've just seen it from Alan, but Alan, I'm trusting you on this one. I can't verify it on Twitter yet because it hasn't caught up. But Alan claims that Kyle Shanahan just got Coach of the Year. So I'm going to look for a confirmation of that fact because I'm still refreshing on Twitter to see it. But that would be huge if Kyle Shanahan did, in fact, win Coach of the Year. We will come back to that once we have it confirmed from a second source in there. Well, let's talk about coaches because we got a couple more topics and then we're going to get out of here. Randon has a show coming up. You know, Hockey Royalty. All of the information for that, when you want to follow it, subscribe, listen to Randon tonight, is down below in the description of the video. So make sure that you go down there, check that out, go give it a listen. But this is the farewell for DeMeco Ryans. Are you
confirmed that he just won Assistant of the Year?
DeMeco did?
Yeah. According to RSF 49ers, and he's pretty tapped in. So
RSF 49ers says that DeMeco won the Assistant Coach of the Year. Are you surprised he took the job with the Texans specifically? Obviously, he played there, but there are some unsavory things about that organization. It's not viewed as a very favorable place to play or to coach. Had some issues. Are you surprised that he took that job?
No, not at all. Because of the fact that I watched his introductory press conference, and that was probably the most inspired I've been watching a press conference by. Like Chip Kelly was wearing sweatpants on his way to his introductory thing. Like DeMeco came in a suit, like he said all the right things. He got you fired up. He made me want to be like run through a wall for the Texans. Like, okay, maybe I should need a AFC team here. Like he was that convincing on the stage. Like I really think that they got the right guy. He wanted to be there, and he went out and told them. He said, "Hey, like I know I got to go win some games here, but I want to make this happen. Find a way to talk to my agent and make this happen." Like he wanted to go back home. He wanted, I think, the team from the ground up, and he said all the right things. Like you looked at everybody in the chat watching this live, all the Houston Texans fans, like they were ready to start like a mob or a war or run through a wall or whatever analogy you want to use. Like they were fired up for the first time. Like I have Houston Texans fans that work that are like, dude, like you've had this guy for 2 years, like, and he was the number one defense. Like, man, we're so pumped. Like it's well deserved. Like I think that he chose the place that his heart wanted to be at, which means he's going to do everything that he possibly can to make the Houston Texans a great organization.
And I have faith, man. I'm with Andre Johnson, who is quoted as saying the following. He was a teammate of DeMeco Ryans there with the Texans from 2006 through 2011, said there's no doubt in my mind he'll turn it around. It's not going to happen overnight, but like I said, I have no doubt he'll turn it around and get it headed in the right direction. People will be proud to say that they're a Houston Texans fan. I believe in DeMeco Ryans. I think he is a leader of men. I think he does have what it takes, both from a motivational standpoint and from an X's and O's intellectual standpoint, that he is going to put his stamp on that organization. And if given the time to turn it around, because it is in a pretty distraught state at the moment, if given that time, will absolutely turn that franchise around. And I've just got to say farewell to DeMeco and wish him nothing but the best. I'm glad he's in the AFC so that we do not have to see the Texans on a regular basis, so that I don't have to watch DeMeco on the other sideline very frequently, because I'm going to miss him, man. He was a hell of a coach. I love the attitude that he brought. I love that enthusiasm, man. When the defense made a big play, and there were a lot of them this year, they'd pan over to DeMeco and that smile and the way he was jumping around. Man, it just got me fired up.
I mean, yeah, good for him. I mean, it really is. Like it is. I think we got a good coach, and we'll talk about that too. But I mean, like we were the number one defense in the NFL. Like he said all the right things. He was a great leader of men. He loves to teach. Like he talks about all the time. Like his favorite thing about coaching is coaching. Like it is making sure that everybody on the field is better because of him. Like that sings everybody's praises. And that stemmed from him being all the way from being, he said, from his mom, working 3 jobs, allowing him to take the car to school, and she walked to work. So that way his life was easier. Like, and he took that mentality all the way up through, coaching or working with Brian Cushing and JJ Watt, and making sure that he could do whatever he could to make their lives easier, whether it was on the field, off the field. Like that's the guy that you want. Right, that's the guy that you want to lead your organization. Is what he's going to do whatever he can to make the Texans better, and to make sure every player on his team is going to be better off for knowing him. Like that, it makes me sad to lose him.
It really does. And again, though, I wish him nothing but the best. I'm sad to lose him, and will be pulling for him ever so slightly. I can't be a Texans fan, but I absolutely will be pulling for DeMeco Ryans. I just want to throw this in there because I find it to be fascinating information as some of these voting trends come out about the various awards. So for Rookie of the Year voting, it came out that Garrett Wilson won the Offensive Rookie of the Year with 46 points. So they assign it based off of first place votes, second place votes, and third place votes, with 5 points for first place, 3 points for second, 1 point for third. Kenneth Walker actually got more first place votes than Garrett Wilson. Kenneth Walker had 19 first place votes, Garrett Wilson with 18. Brock Purdy, though, came in with 6 first place votes. And in the total tally of points, Garrett Wilson 46, Kenneth Walker 37, Brock Purdy 30. So he came in third in that Rookie of the Year voting. And I think it's much deserved. There's no question in my mind, if he played an entire season and played the way in which he did for those 12 games, he would have been Offensive Rookie of the Year, hands down.
I mean, the fact that he played the hardest position on the field and he went undefeated during the regular season and elevated his offense. Like, in my opinion, he should have been enough to win it. I mean, you had Garrett Wilson. Like, did he really elevate the Jets? Like, they still weren't a great team, right? Like, I just think that he did more. Like, but I understand that both Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson had great seasons. I just think what Brock Purdy did, like, his season was just like, it was a brighter flash, I guess, so to speak.
Yes. By the way, we will need to tune into this, but there's apparently George Kittle sings a little bit on this honors show. Like, there's some stuff going on right now, Randon, that I can't wait to tune into on Twitter when we end this thing. So let's get into our last topic here and get you out, because you got a show coming up in 20 minutes. Steve Wilks is in as the defensive coordinator. It has been confirmed by the San Francisco 49ers organization. Little bit of background on Steve Wilks. He was the interim head coach most recently for the Carolina Panthers in 2022 after the firing of Matt Rule, which happened early in October. He took over and was 6-6 with that team that started out 1-4. He was the Cardinals head coach for a single season in 2018. And I remember talking to a close friend of mine that's a big Cardinals fan, and he was disappointed that he just was never given a chance there, because he seemed to have the right mentality, the right makeup to be a quality head coach for that organization. They obviously went in a different direction and are going in a different direction yet again. But one of the questions that comes up, and I want to see your opinion on this one, there have been some suggestions, most notably by David Lombardi of The Athletic, that the Niners have begun to shift in a different direction, going from a rush over coverage team, which was very obvious in their first few years in the Shanahan-Lynch era, right? All the investments along the defensive line, very few investments at the cornerback or safety position. In fact, a lot of us in the podcast world talked about the fact that they were unwilling to spend on the secondary. And now you've had a bit of a shift. You see the big free agent signing last year. You've seen some draft picks that have been spent on the secondary. And then this move to bring in a defensive backs coach who is, throughout his career, almost exclusively defensive backs. Does this signal a little bit of a shift in your mind from rush over coverage to coverage over rush, potentially?
Maybe. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think that you're looking at, it's the first defensive coordinator that they've had that hasn't been from the linebacker era, right? I mean, he is a secondary guy, which is great. The show the NFL is going to a much more pass heavy game, so it makes sense to do so. I think they should invest more in secondary. I've always been a coverage over, obviously that you need both, but investing more into coverage, right? And generally you have 5 players on the field at the same time for coverage, where defensive line you have 4, and they're often interchangeable, and it's the hardest position on the field, because you can't, the pass interference calls are widely abundant. You have to guard the best athletes on the other side without any knowledge of the play. And I think it just shows that the top corners in the NFL really do help teams. You saw what Charvarius Ward did to this secondary. We had the most interceptions from the safety tandem, I think, since Dante Whitner this season, that group. So, I mean, it makes a huge difference. And I think you're looking at, in order to compete, especially with a lot of these quarterbacks in the AFC, the Burrows, the Mahomes, et cetera, and then now Jalen Hurts and all these in the NFC. Like, you need a good secondary. And I think him and keeping Chris Kasurik turning down jobs for defensive coordinator or not wanting to pursue them is going to make this team great. I think it's going to be interesting to see if we can keep our linebackers coach. I think it's going to be a seamless thing. You look at, he had different scene like usage. He blitzes a lot more. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing. He uses a lot of single high safety. So maybe you're going to see Hufanga in the box a lot more, making those havoc plays. The high risk, high reward defense that we were at the second half of the season.
Right.
So maybe that continues all year long. It'll be interesting to see what tweaks he makes from DeMeco Ryans. But overall, I think it's a fantastic fit.
I'm with you. I thought that this was a great hire, a fantastic fit, as you just illustrated. And it now does give us that stud at every level of the defense. Chris Kasurik, obviously, at defensive line, I'm with you. That was huge. The idea that he feels he doesn't want to be a defensive coordinator is the biggest freaking win for the San Francisco 49ers ever, because they can just pay him as the best D-line assistant and keep him there. Johnny Holland as the linebackers coach, and now you have Wilks coming in and probably going to retain Daniel Bullocks there for defensive backs. He's probably going to get the bump because that was split before, and the Niners had decided to go a different direction with Corey Undlin, who was the other defensive backs coach there as well. So you now have a very complete defensive coaching staff. It fits the skill set of the players that are there. And as far as the transition from rush over coverage to coverage over rush, I think we're seeing a shift. I'm not ready to say that it is completely going in that direction, because I see Lynch and the rest of the draft war room continuing to invest in picks along the defensive line. I think John Lynch has always believed in that Tampa Bay model of the strength of the defensive line. So my guess is that he does not give up on that belief, and you see a bit more balance, but not a shift in the other direction. I was very surprised this year to see the Niners flip-flop and not be as prolific in the total number of sacks. I obviously made the prediction that they'd be number one. That title goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Niners disappointing other than Nick Bosa as far as the sack totals on the year, but number one in interceptions on the season, right? I think it was 22 was the total there. And early on in the Kyle Shanahan era, we were bottom of the league when it came to turnovers and interceptions specifically. So this complements what we have already seen as far as the trends. Feels like we can take it to the next level. I'm very pleased with this. I hope we don't see very many coaches going. I do have a little bit of a fear of Bobby Slowick getting the Texans offensive coordinator position, right? He's currently the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. I have faith in Kyle's ability to replace those coaches, but at some point that has to wear on an organization. I would rather that we're not pilfered for more and more assistant coaches each and every season.
But that's part of being one of the top teams. I mean, Shanahan's a factory right now for assistant coaches getting head coaches jobs. And maybe that's one of the reasons Steve Wilks went here. Like, you're looking at, okay, hey, Robert Saleh, 3 years head coach. DeMeco Ryans, 2 years head coach. So Steve Wilks is like, hey, 2 years now, I'm going to get a real chance at a head coaching job.
Right.
This is going to be the best defense he's ever been a part of, bar none. And like he almost willed that Carolina team to a playoff spot. So like you saw, I forget if it was Jason Aponte or if it was just another interview, but Brian Burns was asked about this Steve Wilks coaching hire. And he's like, he's a leader of men, which is what DeMeco Ryans and Robert Saleh have been saying. Like, they're picking high character guys that you want to run through a wall for. And I think that's going to be another type of person that Steve Wilks is. And I think that this Bobby Slowick thing is almost for sure. I think he's one of two finalists for the offensive coordinator job. I
mean, you got to pilfer. If I'm trying to come up with an offensive genius, I'm absolutely pilfering from Kyle Shanahan's staff. That's just the way it's going to be, because I want to bring in those schemes that you see on the field every week. Well, this has been a fantastic show, Randon. Glad to be back on air. I needed that breather. The cold that kicked my ass was a good thing, because I needed to heal. I needed to overcome that emotional letdown that was the end of this storybook season. Again, congrats to JT56, man. I appreciate you being a good sport here and coming in. It was phenomenal to be back. I thank you for coming on. I know you have a show coming up in 10 minutes, so people tune in to Hockey Royalty. Even if you don't enjoy hockey, give it a listen. See if maybe you would be inclined to watch hockey because of Randon's silky voice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Even if you don't even care for hockey, we just need subscribers, right? Request to 1,000.
Boom. Quest for 1,000. Go over there. Do the deal. Help him out. I appreciate it. Randon appreciates it. My man, great show. We will be back on next week. We will keep things going through the offseason as we do. It is going to be another interesting offseason. I didn't think it was possible. 1 year, I thought that was it. 2 years, couldn't possibly. 3 years, here we are. More quarterback drama. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to everyone in the chat, sneakerheads, non-sneakerheads, Niners fans, fans of other teams that shall not be named. Thank you for being here. I will be back trying to have a call-in show this weekend in answer to Alan's question. Yes, indeed. And Jack Hammer and I are looking to do a show on Sunday on this channel as well. So keep your eye on Twitter or on the channel to make sure you can hit the bell notifications after you have subscribed. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And until next time, cheers, faithful.